The debate will come to order. Debaters, you may now open your envelope, but do not write on them until the Prime Minister has started speaking. The resolution before the House today is, this House will prohibit the action of adults posting minors on social media to gain profits. Example, family YouTube channels. Representing the government are its first speaker Myers, the second speaker Pauline, and the third speaker Nadia. Representing the opposition are its first speaker Sophia, the second speaker Joe, and third speaker Kenneth. On behalf of the House, I would like to express a sincere welcome to our judges, and who I will introduce. Our first judge is Daniel Sikakne. Daniel maintains a general real estate and corporate commercial law practice. His practice is focused primarily in property acquisitions and dispositions, specifically residential, commercial, and agricultural lands, while also providing legal advice surrounding leasing arrangements. Our second judge is Michelle McDonald. Michelle McDonald is a lawyer in Saskatoon at Lakefield LLP who focuses on criminal defense and civil litigation. Before that, she clerked at the Court of King's Bench in Saskatoon and competed in the Western Canada Trial Moot competition, winning the prize for top academic performance as an orator. Michelle has made either oral or written submissions in provincial court, the Court of King's Bench, and the Saskatchewan Court of Appeal. Our third judge is Abneet Nehal. Abneet Nehal is a student at law currently acting in Procedo LLP. She has a master's in intellectual property from Queen Mary University in London, UK, and JD LLB from Punjab University of Chandigarh, India. She moved to Canada in 2019. Prior to coming to UK, she has practiced law in India for 10 years, specializing in intellectual property, media, and privacy law. She had a private practice for several years before moving in-house to head the intellectual property department of Z Group, one of the largest news and entertainment group in India. Throughout her practice, she has handled IP for several multinational companies, handling their IP portfolios in India and globally, including launching and advising brand worldwide. After moving to Canada, she worked for a few years with the Saskatchewan Human Rights Commission as an intake consultant and the investigator until she started her articling last year. She wants to continue her intellectual property practice in Canada post her bar completion. Next is our judge, Colleen Bell. Colleen Bell is an associate professor of international politics in the Department of Political Studies in the University of Saskatchewan. Her research contributes to theories of war and security, especially with respect to the Western-led wars and interventions in the global South. She is author of The Freedom of Security, Governing Canada in the Age of Counterterrorism, and co-editor of War, Police, and Assemblies of Intervention. Her current research examines police war in global affairs, martial public diplomacy, and the security politics of Canada's feminist foreign policy. She is editor of the journal Critical Studies on Security. Last but not the least is our judge, Alex Kyle. Alex graduated from the University of Saskatchewan with great distinction, obtaining his Bachelor of Commerce majoring in finance. No stranger to JDC West, Alex competed on the finance and debate teams, as well as helped coach the international business team. Upon graduation, Alex joined the investment industry with RBC Dominion Securities, working with the derivatives and commodities team for 5 years, before recently joining the Bell Private Wealth Management team. Alex holds several industry designations, including his Chartered Investment Management designation, as well as his certificate in derivatives market strategies. I, Shruti Goyal, am the Speaker of the House and timekeeper. I may be referred to as Honorable Speaker. Each debater will deliver a 7-minute constructive speech. Anyone beside the third speaker or the silent can also deliver a 4-minute reply speech. I will be counting down and providing time signals. Paper signals will be shown as each minute passes, as well as at the 30-second mark displayed by a C handshake, ending with the 10-second countdown with my hands. I will also slap the desk at the end of the protected time, as well as at the start of the protected time, first and last minute of the constructive speeches. There will be a hard stop for all speeches at 7 minutes, with no grace period. I will say stop. Points of information will be allowed during the constructive speeches, but not during the first and the last minute of these speeches, as this is the protected time. POIs are not permitted during the reply speech. Points of clarifications are allowed, but may only be offered in the beginning half of the first government speech, outside of the protected time. Points will be deducted for any debater who interrupts another excessively. Are there any questions regarding the rules? I now call upon the first speaker to introduce the government case for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you all those gathered here today. Today, our side of the House brings forth a bill to protect those most vulnerable in today's society. In the increasing age of ever-increasing digitization, new rules are needed to protect those who need protected most. Today, we bring forth the bill that would prohibit the action of adults posting minors on social media to gain profits. This bill we bring forth is essential because minors are not always able to make the choice that is required when being presented on social media. First, we would like to define a few key concepts. We will explain our model, the burden we have set out for side opposition, and then first, our constructives. First, the key terms of this motion. Firstly, we would like to state this motion will be effective as of the date of passing. So in that no previous posts on social media will be affected by this motion. Firstly, we'd like to define the House being Canada, social media as all social apps in which content, photos, or videos can be posted for profit of the poster, profit as including sponsored brand deals, ad revenue, and similar. Additionally, content as photos or videos that contain images of minors. Minors being defined by federally younger than the federal age of majority, that being 18, and adults being defined as older than the federal age of majority. Additionally, by prohibits, we refer to the removal of offending content and fines proportional to the ad revenue earned on said content. Now, I ask you, how will we enforce this motion? This is new ground in today's digital age. This is ground that we have not touched on before, but crucially important ground. First, what happens to older content on social media? We believe that no changes shall be made to older content. This bill is only applying for the path forwards, as we believe this is the most efficient way to implement this bill. Secondly, what will this look like for social media platforms? In that regard, this approach is not novel because we already implemented this system when we implemented COVID-19 fact-checking guidelines in Canada. The same system will be used to determine offending posts and to have them flagged or removed by the social media platforms themselves. Additionally, what happens now? What does it look like when an offending post is flagged by a social media platform? First, the post will be removed by the platform, as with any post featuring content that violates their terms and conditions, as that is how this will be enforced. And secondly, a fine will be administered to the owner of the account as appropriate by the government. We would now like to talk about the burden that the side government has to prove. Firstly, their burden is to explain how the current status quo protects minors more than this proposal. I will take your point of clarification.
For those that have previous brand deals and sponsorships and get money based on contracts of views, what happens to those contracts and deals that continue to get used?
Thank you for your question. Honourable Speaker, as we discussed in our motion, this will not affect previously posted content. Any pre-existing videos, as is standard precedent in Canada, will not be affected. That includes all content such as photos, text posts, etc. I'd like to begin my constructive now, where I describe to you why this bill is important and why adults having power over children's images to gain profit on social media is so inherently wrong. Firstly, the theme of this debate I would like to set as minors versus adults, the power dynamic. On social media platforms, account holders are able to make choice choices to monetize their accounts. This is a distinct decision, and therefore this bill will not simply affect everyone posting photos of their kids on social media. This will only affect those who make the active decision to monetize those images of their children. And why is monetizing images of your children a bad thing? Well, firstly, the imbalance of power is innately flawed. When an individual has significant power over another, the other individual simply cannot consent to any contract or act. This is pre-existing law in Canada. A child cannot sign a legal contract, not at this time, in the same way that a child is not allowed to drive because there are laws there to protect them. This law is founded for the same reason. The imbalance of power also brings up the idea of the mix-matching of motivations. When an individual in a position of power is motivated not only by the well-being of the child they are in a position of power over, but the monetary gain they can make from these transactions, there is an innate bias and there is an innate conflict of interest. Children need to be protected. Children should not be at the whims of those who have power over them and can take advantage of that for profit.
Why does Side government not choose to go after child actors or child beauty pageant shows?
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, these industries are already fairly well regulated and have existing legal precedents. In today's social media age, there has been a rampant rise in the number of online exploitations of children. The number of YouTubers whose entire jobs, their entire careers, is to post videos of their children's lives. These children cannot consent to their entire life being shared with the world for the profit of their parents. And when their parents make the entirety of their income off their children, then really what are they looking out for? Is it their children's well-being and best interests? Or is it the fact that they can make money? Additionally, we would like to reiterate the burden at this time. Again, side opposition must prove that our bill providing additional protections for children would be significantly or more detrimental than the current status quo. Our second speaker will discuss the dangers of posting children on social media and how this has become increasingly more prevalent in today's society. And our third speaker will summarize our arguments. Today on Side Government, we are excited to bring forth this motion that will put us forward into the next step in what is required in safety legislature to protect children in Canada. Thank you.
I thank you member for the remarks. The time left was 6 minutes 56 seconds. We shall now hear the first speaker for the opposition.
Have you ever had to do something that your parents told you to do, but you don't want to do it? Have you ever had to go to that soccer game that you don't want to go to? Have you ever wanted to go on that field trip, but you need your parents' consent to sign the form? Parents make choices for their kids every day. So why are we choosing to put this one out there and make a law and regulation for it? There really is no need for it. So that is why in side opposition, I'm so proud to oppose. So firstly, what I'm going to be doing for us today is I'm going to be providing some rebuttal to what we've heard from side government. And then I'm going to be diving into our constructive today with my first point explaining the career of content creators and how this brings social benefit to society, to the families, and to the kids. So let's examine what we heard out of side government, the power imbalance between minors and adults. In the law today, we have parents sign consent form for children all the time. They make choices for their children. So to say that kids don't have a choice here in this argument, kids don't have a choice if they're going to soccer practice, kids don't have that choice if they're going to hockey games. So in that essence, that point needs to fall because it holds no ground specifically to this. The second thing that they talk about is the bias of parents' intention to gain a profit from these children. Let's look at an example for Connor Bedard, the famous hockey player that just played on the National Junior League. His parents maybe saw that he had great potential to be the next Connor McDavid. So they had bias there and continued to put him in a hockey practice, maybe even if he didn't want to. That is an example showing you that parents make choices every day for their kids that can potentially lead to a profit. To assume that there's just bias in this own industry is false, because we all have biases, because we all want our children to make some profit. And then we asked the POI, why not regulate child actors? Those are the ones that are truly harmed in today's debate and reap the most amount of profit. But then they said, well, it's already well regulated. Well, if the industry is already well regulated, why are we going for the smallest actor here? If it's already well regulated, why put this motion forward? That doesn't make sense. So now that we've seen that I've broken down all of their key points and how they don't hold in today's society, I'm going to tell you why this motion cannot happen, because it is hurting a small group of individuals and the careers of those content creators. So let me explain to you how the careers of a content creator begin. Firstly, you can begin as an individual that creates content on your own, and you share your lifestyle, you share your story, and in life, you do have a family. And so if that child comes a part of your family, you will continue to share your lifestyle. This is how you're making your career. Why are we prohibiting that and stopping people's career? Or second option of a content creator is when you're at a stay-at-home mom and then you have a child and then you want to make extra revenue, so you post videos as well so you can be home and care for your child. We see the positive in this. We see the social good that parents get to stay home and be with their children. But yet you seem to disagree.
Honorable Speaker, side opposition, are you suggesting that consent forms for sports, as you say, yes, there are consent forms. Are there really consent forms when it comes to social media? Because as far as I'm aware, there aren't.
There's no consent forms for many of the decisions you do. You don't have a consent form for sports. You don't have a consent form for social media, because that is the law. That is what we're saying today. It is because we are giving the choice to the parent to make these decisions, and that needs to happen. We are saying that parents are able to make the strong decisions. What you are prohibiting is harm for individuals, for a small minority group that are making a career out of this. We see that this actually provides social good for these families on two grounds. On the first ground, that you get to spend more time with your children as social content creators, but on the second ground, that if you do get profits, you can financially support your child. And we see this as a good thing. It is inherently good. I propose the question to you and I ask you to answer. Tell me a Canadian child that is on social media that has it bad because of this, because of being on social media. You cannot provide me an example. So now I want to provide you with an example of a family of social content creators called Matt and Abby. They lost their jobs because of the pandemic and weren't able to financially support themselves. So what did they do? They turned to TikTok as fun, and then they started posting videos. And because of this, they were able to create a career out of it. They were able to sustain themselves and get the profits from it and be financially successful. So they were sharing their life. And while they were sharing their lives, they then had a child along the way. Why are we then punishing this family once they have a child to stop their career? How will they then be able to financially support that family? They won't be. But you seem to disagree.
So what you're saying is that it's okay to make a career out of posting your child?
What we're saying, it is okay to make a career out of content, being a content creator. That is what we are saying. We are saying that there's more benefits to this, the social good of the parents, of being able to spend time with your child, and the second good of making a financial living out of it to support your child. So as you can see here, everyone will be benefiting. But not only that, what do we benefit as well from these social content creators is that there can be an educational purpose as well. Have you ever been that maybe new-time mom and not sure exactly what products to use? And you turn to social media and they tell you, don't use this brand of bottle, it may have some chemicals in it, or use this brand. We see this as inherently good on our side of the house. What we're seeing on our side of the house is the inherent good that can happen. And if you put this motion at hand, we're putting burdens on a small group of individuals that don't deserve it. These individuals have built a career for themselves, and it's not fair to impose this burden. So what have I done for us today? I firstly have told us why their point of minors versus adults doesn't sound, because it is for every decision that parents make for a child, they always will have that power, but there's no reasons why it needs to be specific to this. We realize that it is important, What we realize is that we think that this motion will bring more harm than good and stop the good that is coming from it. And then what I've done for you today is I brought forth our first point today about the careers of content creator and how it comes to be and why it's important and the social impacts and the social good it brought from us. The social good because we see that parents should be able to stay at home with their child, and if they do get a profit from it, that is a good thing because then they can reinvest that financial profit into their children. Because of all these additional benefits, I am so proud to oppose this motion.
I thank the member for their remarks. The time elapsed was 6 minutes 56 seconds. I now call upon the second speaker for the government.
Esteemed guests, panel, members of side opposition and members of side government, good afternoon. What am I going to do for you here today? I'm going to explain how social media is a marketing tool and how it affects children in that, and I'm going to show you the dangers of using social media and posting your children on the social media. But before that, I do have some refutation from the first speaker of the opposition. The speaker said that parents make choices every day for their children, force them to go for football, force them to go for games, force them to do this, and that. But do you think parents are always right? Every human being of us is always, the saying will go, human is to error. Everybody makes errors. We have had situations of parents abusing children, parents selling their children off to sex trafficking, parents trafficking. So does that mean they're making the right choice for their children? Some other time. If you want to, the speaker also said that they want to create content, and that's okay. But if you want to create content, why do you have to involve a child? Why is that a factor that needs to be there? Why can't you create content about yourself? She also mentioned staying at home moms and how it's a way of making money or making extra revenue. Can they do other content? Why does it have to involve content with children? Why can you not make content about yourself, about your daily life, what you do, the cleaning you do, how you wash dishes, how you bake cakes? Why can't you make content about that? Why does it have to involve a child, a minor for that matter? But she would seem to disagree.
Honorable Speaker, if you're saying to make content about your daily life, parents' daily life is about taking care of their children.
And that's okay, but it is like that, but you don't have to show it. You can just say, oh, I did this for my child, XYZ. You do not have to show a video of you changing a diaper of your child. On to my points. They say if you're not buying anything, then you are the product. In this situation, what's the commodity? Minors. The motion itself should make everyone in this room and mostly members of side opposition feel hurt and disappointed because we are literally debating if it's okay to post your child on social media for money. You can find any other way to make money, but posting your child on social media you think is the right way. By posting a child on some other time, thank you. By posting a child on social media, you are denying your child the right to privacy. You are denying the child the ability to be assertive and decisive because you are literally forcing them to be in these videos that they don't want. And even if they do want to be in the videos, as a parent, it is your duty to make the right, please understand, the right decision that will not put them in danger. And posting your child for monetary value is literally below the belt and dangerous. How is this dangerous? I will explain to you. I Wish My Mother Was Dead, a book by Jeanette McCarthy that tells you the consequences of exploiting children from a young age. A good read, and I urge that all of you take a look at that book. The book I Wish My Mother Was Dead is a tell-it-all about the consequence of child exploitation. She is famous, you know her. If you watch Sam and Cat or iCarly, the Sam Packet, you'll know her. She's from iCarly. And she says she wishes her mother was dead. Do you know how much exploitation or how bad that your mother has to force you to do things for you to wish that she was dead? But you would seem to disagree about that.
Honorable Speaker, can you provide me an example of a Canadian child that is harmed from their being posted on social media today?
For sure. We do have the Ace family. I think you know them.
The Ace family is a facade of a perfect family, but they have mostly and have been accused a lot of times of swindling money and all that. From fundraisers that they didn't, there is a case that they say they got money, they did a fundraiser, they got money, but there was no money anywhere. They say they don't know where the money went. How do you think they got this money? They got this money by creating content from YouTube channels, daily posting videos of their children. Everything surrounds their children. I'll continue. As I was saying, I wish my mother was dead. Some of the problems that she mentions about early exposure to all this is exposure to pedophiles, eating disorders, bulimia, extreme depression, extreme anxiety, amongst other things. And this is what she wants to subject our children to. By this, you're exposing children to bullying, harassment, and even endangering your own safety. Just because when you post a picture or a video of a child, you can tell the location, and it's at this age and day, with the technology that we have, it is very easy to find the location of anyone and anything if you just try hard enough. Another example I want to give you is Kim Kardashian and Northwest. They're very famous, you know them. They have a TikTok. If you go to their TikTok at this moment, you will see that their TikTok comments are off. Why? Because they understand that we, as posting such content on social media, you will know that adults and even other people are very brutal people. And that is why they have the comment section off. In other circumstances, when this bullying and harassment has gone some other time, in other circumstances, when this bullying and harassment has gone on too far and too much from these children, other people don't have the option of turning off their comments. They resort to suicide, and that is the extreme. Do you want that to be a problem? We're already experiencing this, but do you want to add on it? So, what have I told you here today? I have told you that if this motion is passed, if this motion is passed, then you are protecting children. You are not using them as a commodity. You are not using them to make money. I assure you, panel and members of the opposition, there is a different way to make money. And posting your children because they know they will give you that extra money, that extra attention that you're seeking, is not it. And that is very below the belt for you to use a child to make money. Be ashamed. Have a good day.
I thank the member for this 7-minute consecutive speech. The time elapsed was 6 minutes 42 seconds. I now call upon the second speaker for the opposition.
Honorable Speaker, why do we have kids in movies? Why do we have kids online? Why do we have kids in media in general? One simple response to that. Kids and children are part of our society. And like it or not, the online environment, the so-called metaverse, is also going to be a part of our society. So if we restrict kids, if we restrict them from being able to be on the online world, are we not simply restricting an entire demographic from being able to participate in society? By banning kids in media and arts and creativity and is largely restricted, are we just not basically banning their freedom of expression? As a second member of said opposition, I'll be doing two main things for you today. Firstly, I'll be going over some rebuttal from what little we heard from the second member of said government before jumping into my own constructive about the legal justification for why parents have and should be granted control over the social media presence of their children. So firstly, on rebuttal. The second member came up and said a lot of dangerous things that can happen to children. Things like sex trafficking, things like child abuse. But understand, Honorable Speaker, laws are already in place in the status quo to restrict these things from happening. There's laws in place for children to report, abuses from the parents. There are laws in place protecting children from dangerous at-home environments. There are systems in place to assist children whenever they can. Yes, sometimes these systems might not be perfect, but they are in place. And that point does not rest on, and if side government wants to say that, parents posting their kids on social media would cause sex trafficking, I'm not sure how that will connect, and that's pretty much outside the scope of this debate. But going further onto that narrative of what we heard from side opposition, from side government, the entire second point focused on the bullying and the negative impacts of social media. Honorable Speaker, if side government's main gripe is with social media, then why not just ban kids from being able to participate on social media? Why not actually put more restriction in place on that? Because Honorable Speaker, recognize that bullying, unfortunately, is a part of what happens in everyday life. People face bullying wherever they go, and especially on the internet as well. Kids, under this motion, can post themselves online as well. And guess what? They'll probably face bullying for that as well. What we see is that bullying, these negative impacts of social media, comes from the algorithms provided by social media companies. Now with that, I want to jump into my own constructive, talking about the legal justification on why parents actually should control their kids' social media presences. Firstly, let's ask you one question. Let's look at kids as a whole. Why do we actually let parents control have legal control over their kids? Why do they have ability to sign consent for them? It is because kids overall do not have ability to sign consent for themselves. They are not of the age of majority. They don't have capacity to do so. We see this in examples of what? In schools. When kids have to go to, let's say, a sports day, and the school wants to take pictures of the kids, what do they ask the parents to do? They ask them to sign a waiver, give them the consent to allow the kid to be part of the school's media, to allow the kid to be actually used as part of the school's promotion of its activities. But you seem to disagree.
Honorable Speaker, I would like to ask the member of opposition, do you think if our YouTube family that post their children for content stops posting the same children, do you think they will make the same money?
Honorable Speaker, recognize that these families, like we said in the Leader Opposition speech, made their decision into their career long before they had kids as well. So why is it fair for these families to say, guess what, because you have a kid, you have to abandon your entire career? Honorable Speaker, that is simply unfair, and we simply don't want to see that happen in any single world. So, now going back to my constructive, understand that having parents sign consent, yes, although it happens up to the age of 18, it only really applies to when the kid is extremely young. Why is this? Because the kid cannot adequately express itself. The kid cannot adequately express its intentions, what it likes, what it does not like. When a kid is able to speak coherently, when it's able to express thoughts coherently, they make their thoughts heard. When a kid becomes older and they don't want to participate in things like their family's YouTube channel, they can have a conversation with their parents about it. Furthermore, I hope that 9 out of 10 parents have their kids' best interests at heart. They take their kids' best interests into consideration as well. So how would this apply? Let's say your kid comes up to you and says, Mom, Dad, it was fun participating in the YouTube channels with you, but I think I want to go a different way. I don't want to be in these channels anymore. 9 out of 10 parents would probably take that into consideration and say, you know what, you're right. Maybe it's time for you to take a step back, to do what you want to do, not at this time. However, of the small majority of kids, of this whose parents said, no, you have to participate in this because it's for our family's good, the people that side government seems to be so concentrated on, what could happen? Understand that kids can also post on social media too. They have access to social media. So what can they do? They can go online and they can post about what their actual feelings are. They can tell the world what their actual feelings are. How do they actually want to be part of this social media channel, or do they actually not want to be part of this channel? They can effectively talk about these things by themselves. They can spread their own word. Honorable Speaker, side government may say that that is just a fantasy world, that kids will come out and say this. But recognize that this has happened. How has this happened? It's happened in the United States with the example of Kellyanne Conway, one of the members of Donald Trump's White House. What happened was her daughter came out publicly and said, I do not express or share the same views that my parents do. She publicly came out on a social media platform stating these intentions, stating these views. If she can do that, what is keeping the children of these other of these content creators from doing the exact same thing? Nothing is keeping them. And if you say something is keeping them from doing this, well, Honorable Speaker, recognize that keeping them from internet, keeping them away from having access to friends or other channels is basically under the status quo filed as child abuse. So again, it is protected. So Honorable Speaker, what have I really told you today? I've told you that keeping children from media is fundamentally a bad idea, as children are a representation of our society, and to provide a legal justification for why parents should have control over their social media presences. Thank you.
I thank the member for the remarks. The time left for 7 minutes. I now call on the third speaker for the government.
Do you remember when you were a kid? Do you remember playing, having fun, not being stressed out about what time you needed to post a video, what time a TikTok needed to come out, what time you had to post that story on Instagram? Remember our childhoods when we got to play unrestricted from the dangers that social media actually present? The dangers as in you cannot regulate who views that content and why they view it. We remember being kids, and we remember the innocence and the ability to actually play and ponder and be curious and what? Oh, right, make mistakes. Make mistakes without judgment. Make mistakes without millions, billions of people online watching, ready to pounce. Have you ever been through a comment section online? Have you ever read through the comments? Have you ever read through how people tear apart people in simply a comment section? Here's the deal. We're here debating what? Are we debating whether people can post on social media and whether Matt and Abby can post their life? No, that's absolutely not what we're debating. You know what? Social media has so many great benefits. Cool. That's not what we're debating. What are we debating? We're debating minors. Let's not forget about who's actually at the crux of this debate. But side opposition has just deviated so far from what the word minor actually means. What is a minor? Well, a minor is somebody who's under the age of 18. Okay, cool. So yeah, they might argue once you're a little bit older, you can make these decisions, and they bring up Donald Trump's daughter, who is not 4 years old, but that's fine. I'll take it at their best, because it seems to be the crux of their debate that we're just arguing about Matt and Abby, and that suddenly they, this whole picture perfect, they can't make money anymore. That's not what we're arguing. What we're arguing is, should minors be exploited as a marketing tool for families to make profit? That's actually what is at the crux of this debate. So it's so unfortunate that as the third speaker on my side of the house that I'm still having to re-clarify what's actually being talked about. So clearly they've missed the point of the debate, and that's why they've already lost. But okay, let's go into some really key points of refutation. So first of all, the consent forms is a huge deal. And this is why, because they bring up consent forms, for sports and stuff, and I question them on that, and they're like, well, you don't need a consent form for everything. Cool. But then they contradict themselves because they bring up the example of bringing in consent forms for photography in schools. They bring up the consent form that you have to sign as a parent in order for those pictures to be posted online. Why? Because they understand what? The danger, the implication, the liability behind and the weight of those photos. So it's so ironic that own point contradicts themselves. So here's the thing. Okay. So they bring up this whole media argument, and I'm going to break it down now so that my final speaker doesn't have to break it down. So they bring up media. They say in movies and all this great stuff and pageants, there's no regulation and we're just subjugating social media. So I'm going to use this last crux to really just shape the rest of my speech, because it's a really fundamental moving point in this debate. Here's why. So media in general that portrays
children. I'll take you in a moment. So media in general that portrays children, like let's say a movie. In a movie, a child is an actor, and there are regulations in place. We already know this as a whole in society. There are regulations in place to make sure that the monetization that children receive in movies is given to them. Okay, here's another point, is that a child in a movie is a signed contract. It's a whole legal role. I don't think the legal system made up stuff for this, but what is unregulated still to this day? Social media. That's why we're here, is that social media is this whole new age. We've been watching movies for years, but social media and the precedent that it's taking and these family YouTubers and this family lifestyle of having kids at the crux of your content, that is why we're here. We're here because the world is changing, not because we're debating movies and beauty pageants that have been around forever. You know what's really taken precedent is TikTok and other social media platforms. Okay, I'll take you now.
Honorable Speaker, we're curious, is government prohibiting minors from posting about other minors too?
Okay, this is great. This is really great. And I'm so happy that you bring that up right now because it's going to segue right into what I'm getting at. Okay, so we're saying adults posting minors. We never said minors posting minors. We never said a minor themselves who wants to create their own social media. So let's say I'm like 14 years old and I'm part of a family YouTube channel, but then I also want to create my own social media. You have made that choice. That minor has made that choice. What we're debating here, again, the question proves my point. They're missing the heart of the debate. What are we debating here? We're debating adults who are over the age of 18, who are using kids for monetary benefits. Why do we keep missing the crux of this debate? Because it's really exhausting, as you can tell. I just have to spend 30 seconds trying to explain it and shoot that down. So, okay, let me refocus here. Why is social media so detrimental? They bring up this happy family life. Let me bring up examples of suicide. Let me bring up examples where kids who grew up in this actually grew up and turned against what was happening and spoke out about the fact that they did not have the right to consent to what was actually going on in their life. We're talking about, they're comparing happy life to, well, social media is not really that bad. Well, when was the last time you were affected by social media? And most people in this room are adults. And the way it affected you, a comment, or the way something somebody posted, it made a reaction in you. But here we are exposing minors to a whole demographic, hosts of millions and billions of people to actually view this content. So why at the end of the day is this like detrimental completely? It's detrimental because social media is not social media. It's actually a marketing platform. So when we look at it as a complete marketing commodity and its essential benefit is actually just to make money, then we can understand why social media is so dangerous to minors who don't have the right to make a choice. So,
I thank the member for your remarks. Time left was 7 minutes. The third opposition speaker will now deliver the last speech opposing the case.
Side government's main gripe in today's debate is not about adults posting minors on the internet, whether for profit or without profit, really. Their main concern is about the internet itself, about social media itself. We've heard from multiple speakers on side government about how the internet is a dangerous place to be, how social media leads to, of course, cyberbullying, leads to potentially suicide and other detrimental causes. And I think that's why my partner's POI about whether or not side government stops minors from posting other minors is so important in today's debate. Because although, yeah, their side would prohibit adults from posting what I assume most likely are going to be their own children on social media, they're not prohibiting the schoolyard bullies that continuously harass peers in the schoolyard and post it on social media. They're not stopping any of these aspects. I think that's something really important to consider, right? Because that's not the main issue of today's debate. Again, I think as some of the speakers on my side opposition made it very clear, this debate concerns some very specific people. lifestyle content creators that already existed, that already found their niche creating lifestyle content, that as it happens had a child or had children and had to pivot their lifestyle content in order to reflect the busy nature that having a child provides, right? We don't want to ruin their new lives. We don't want to ruin their new careers by taking this new reality of social media and the opportunity and career that it provides away from them. So I want you to imagine, for example, Aaron, a pediatric nurse. And this guy, Aaron, he is an expert in infant care, right? He's just had a child and decided to, you know what? I'm going to post some TikToks about childcare. I'm going to teach people how to properly hold a baby, how to properly feed a baby. And as it happens, I can make a few bucks while at the same time. Ultimately, that's what government wants to ban, right? They get to ban many things, and that includes banning nurses from helping other parents learn how to parent properly and get a bit of pocket cash. Wouldn't you agree?
Honorable Speaker, this motion, again, as we have discussed, it does not ban the posting of children, simply the monetization of that process. How would Side Opposition respond to that?
I think that for Aaron, if he has the incentive and wants to make money from the work on social media that he does, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that provides valuable content that many people are able to enjoy and many people are able to learn from, right? I think that's the reality of the matter. But more importantly, in today's debate, as your third speaker on Side Opposition, I want to do a few things for you today. Firstly, I want to ask the question, does society benefit in the status quo? Would there be harms and losses under Side government's model? And secondly, the key question is, are kids abused by their parents when they get posted on social media, right? That's the main concern. Okay, so let's analyze that first question. Does society benefit in the status quo? Now, my partner, the second speaker in Side Opposition, told you that media, whether it be social media or movies and TV and literature, is a reflection of reality. That means that there are children in reality, and that means there must be children in media too. Otherwise, it's just not the same. The reflection and the representation is inaccurate. We think that banning kids from media, including social media, harms the arts, harms creativity, and to be honest, largely restricts the ability to express oneself freely and accurately in today's reality, right? That's one of the main concerns we have. But of course, we also brought to you the examples to lifestyle creators, to people that are busy creating valuable content that many millions of people like to consume, like to learn from, such as Aaron the nurse, such as Matt and Abby, right? We think that these opportunities should not be taken away from them. Because again, I need to reiterate, people don't have kids so they can post about their kids, right? People have kids already, have a lifestyle content platform, and decide they need to pivot to accurately reflect their new realities as a parent. I don't think people have kids to make videos about those kids. To be honest, it's more likely people have kids on accident, right? But you seem to disagree.
On your point of Erin and wanting to teach parents how to hold children, why can't you just use a doll? What's the difference between a doll and a human? Why can't you just use this? What's the difference?
Thank you. That's a great POI. That's a great POI. And I think there are some realities that ultimately make it that experts in their field, such as Erin, a pediatric nurse, are able to show with a real baby, right? There are intricacies that dolls do not represent. There are ways when you fold it, it might not fit perfectly, right? A real baby is the real deal. You got to follow exactly as it should be. Now, another key question in today's debate, of course, is, are kids abused? I think that's one of the key things. And as we made it clear, I think Side government's main gripes in today's debate aren't with parents, aren't with adults posting children on social media. Their main concern is about the dangers of social media itself. So I want to reiterate that we asked that POI, why not look after and why not go after minors that are engaging in cyberbullying? Well, the answer is because that's not what the debate is ultimately centered on. But the key answer to this is that kids are not currently being abused. I can give you a few reasons for this, firstly. Now, should kids be abused? I think one of the worst ways to do it is by filming yourself and uploading it to social media. I think filming yourself gives away evidence, gives away clues. Even if you're not doing it on camera, it gives away pieces in the background that can indicate that something is wrong. So if abuse is happening, we think that in this household, it likely would have happened anyway. They wouldn't have pushed their kids to show up on camera. They would have pushed their kids too hard, abused them too hard in somewhere else, right? Perhaps pursuing hockey, for example, right? We think that would have happened anyway. These characters are abusive by nature. But more importantly, again, I think when posting kids on social media is actually, as we've said, a way to mitigate and identify abuse. So we think abuse would be either quickly identified and stopped by Child Protective Services or non-existent at all. So we don't think kids are being abused online majorly by parents, right? We think that exists when minors post about minors. So I think that's a major contentious issue in today's debate. So as your third speaker on side opposition, what have I told you? We've told you that media ultimately is a representation of reality. And because of that case, kids exist in our reality. They need to be represented on media and to be active in that sector of the world. And oftentimes, young kids are not able to do so and unable to consent. Therefore, their parents have that legal obligation to consent on their behalf, as the second speaker of opposition made it so clear. For those reasons, of course, we are so proud to continue opposing. Thank you.
I thank the member for his speech. The time left was 6 minutes 55 seconds. At this time, there will be a 2-minute break, but please prepare the reply speeches. We will now hear a 4-minute report speech from each speaker, starting with the opposition.
Remember those days as kids when you rushed home from school and then you had to go quickly to your soccer game, or you had to go do your homework, or you had to go do something else? Or maybe now you rush home to school because you want to post a video because you think this is an inherently good thing. What we're here to prove today is to show you that we are going to be providing more social gain if we don't allow this motion to go. So furthermore, what I'm going to be doing for us today is 2 things: telling you what side government has said and why they've lost this debate, and why side opposition has won. So allow me to begin with what side opposition has told us today. Their first speaker comes up and tells us about minors versus adults, this power imbalance with the bias to gain a profit. But I tell you, parents have a bias already for their child to go ahead and be successful and gain a profit. I told you with this Connor Bedard example. And then we also provided a POI to that individual. What about child actors? Why are we not going harder onto the main crooks of individuals that we see being exploited? Well, they said it's already well regulated. Well, if things are already well regulated, why are we continuing with today's debate? Then their second speaker comes up and tells us how it's dangerous and how that this would lead to sex trafficking. We think that is a big logistic gaps of their analysis of what the dangers propose. We don't think that is the case because we don't think parents are initially trying to cause harm to their children. And we don't think that is why there is limits to the danger option here. Then the third speaker comes up and talks about more specifically the danger, the badness of social media. But we're telling you, you're not getting rid of the badness of social media if minors can still post against other minors. You're not stopping bullying. You're not stopping comment section. That will continue to happen. What you are stopping is the ability for parents to have the opportunity to create profits in order to financially support their children. And that is a social benefit that I am so proud to support. What we have told you here today is that the status quo is working. But firstly, we brought up the point of the career of the content creator. Most times you're not having a child in order to become that family YouTube channel. What you're seeing here is that many individuals already have that content career, and we don't think that they should be inhibited to not continue their career because they have a child. We don't think that is fair on our side of the house. We think you should be allowed to do that because of the social benefits that it brings. Social good that you get to spend more time with your child, the financial benefit that you get to reinvest that money into the child, and not only that, we see that this is better for the child because potentially maybe they can pursue a career as well in social media. So now I want to talk about our second point that we brought up to us is about the legal consent. We've told you today in the status quo, parents have legal consent over their children. We told you this because that is inherently example. You write a permission slip consent form for when your child goes to hockey because you know the dangers. You write a permission slip consent form for when your child posts a photo. We give consent, so why do parents need... So that is why parents are allowed to post about their children because they have authority and consent over them. And then finally, our third speaker came up to you and told you how their only focus of today's debate was about the dangers of social media by their third speaker. But we're telling you these dangers will continue to persist with minors posting about minors. We have won today's debate because we are bringing more social good on our side. We're bringing social good because parents will get the opportunity to share their lives, educate others, educate other individuals like that nurse, or like the family and Matt have. We see that we are getting more good on our side of the house and why this motion cannot happen because it's not fair to only prohibit a small group of individuals, a small group that potentially are using this as a career to financially support their family. Because of all these goods that are coming from our side of the house, this is why we have won today's debate and why I'm so proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you. The time elapsed was 4 minutes. We will now hear the proposition.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Side opposition lost this debate the moment they said that social media is a representation of reality. I don't know what reality you live in, but in my reality and the reality that I think we all occupy today, social media is simply not that. As my coworkers have discussed, social media is ripe with misrepresentation, exploitation, and the abuse that we have sought to fight against today. Additionally, side government admitted in their own speeches that they said that children are smart enough to make the choice, but yet they don't seem to believe or agree with us that children should be smart enough to be able to say no to exploitative parents. But again, in these situations, as we have described, children do simply not have that choice. Side opposition said that this bill would hurt a small group of individuals, but we discussed the fact that social media and families that have family social media accounts, adults who post images of minors for profits, is a large group. They said a small group of individuals will be harmed by this bill, but they didn't mention the large group of minors that will be protected by it. They said there was an inherent good to this bill, but they only brought up the examples of families making money off of their children. They brought up the argument that kids can make their own platforms on social media, but that is fundamentally not what we are debating about today. What we brought forth to you was a protection from children in exploitative and abusive situations where they might not feel safe or have the knowledge to say no. As my co-workers discussed, so many times the children who have been in these exploitative situations only realize it years later when they see how unusual their childhoods really were. There's a reason why we don't let toddlers drive cars. There's a reason why we've brought up these metaphors today, because children are often not able to make these decisions for themselves. Sometimes the most vulnerable people need the most protection. That is why this bill exists. Additionally, side opposition failed our burden today. They failed to prove that this bill would be worse than the status quo. They only brought up examples about how it's void because that children can make their own social media accounts, when what we were fundamentally discussing is the exploitative situations where children do not know that they have these choices, where they do not know that they do not have to be in these exploitative situations, that the things they are experiencing are not normal. This is the things we want to stop. When they failed the burden today, that is when we won this debate, because we proved that this provides protection for children, because not all children know they have the choice, not all children have the ability or the safe environment to make the choice, and with this bill, that choice and the need for these protections will be in place. Children should not be in a position where they should be having to try to escape from their parents to actually be in a safe situation. And they brought up the example that bias was not present in situations where families were profiting off of their children. Fundamentally, yes, you can love your children and have your children's best interests in heart, but again, we brought up the example that people also love money, and when you rely on your children for money, there's an innate conflict of interest, and therefore that point did not stand. Fundamentally, what have we talked to you about today? We've talked to you about the reasons why children might not feel the power to ask for change and why they need protections from the outside world. We give children training wheels for a reason, and in the digital age, we need digital training wheels. Thank you.
I thank the member for concluding the debate. The time elapsed was 4 minutes. Judges, please complete your ballot. Judges are not permitted to offer feedback at this time. If there are no objections by judges, comparators, and observers are asked to leave the room.